Fate rejected me before I ever had a chance to fail. Before my first shift, before my name was carved into any record, the seers delivered their verdict. My soul thread was flawed. The moon had supposedly spoken, declaring my existence an error that would fracture the balance of the realm. I was branded as the woman no alpha could ever claim, a mistake written in the stars. The council erased my future to save the kingdom, and the world moved on, comforted by the lie that destiny is always right. Except, destiny forgot one thing: an alpha king who doesn't kneel to prophecy. Years later, as the moon bled red over the high citadel, the impossible happened. The bond ignited, not with the woman destiny had promised the king, but with me, the one fate had condemned. As the kingdom's magic began to unravel and the stars themselves recoiled in shock, the Alpha King didn't look at the prophecies, he looked at me. He didn't just accept the bond, he chose to shatter every law ever written to keep us apart. If you've ever been told you don't belong, or that your path has already been decided by someone else, stay with me, because the strongest bond isn't the one prophecy predicts. It's the one that survives when you tell destiny no. The king isn't just defending a mate. He's starting a war against fate itself. Comment and subscribe if you believe the strongest bonds are the ones prophecy tried to erase. She grew up in the quiet spaces between decisions. Not exiled, not exactly, just excluded. The village elders never spoke her name during moon readings. The seers never tested her compatibility threads. When other children whispered excitedly about future mates and pack callings, she learned to listen without asking questions that would make the room go still. Her mother understood. "Some doors don't open," she said once, brushing her hair gently. "That doesn't mean you stop walking." But the truth surfaced eventually. It always did. She was 16 when the High Seer finally called her forward, face pale, hands shaking not with fear, but reluctance. "The moon has no path for you," the seer said softly. "Your fate thread ends before it begins." The words fell like snow, quiet, suffocating. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," the seer continued, avoiding her eyes, "that you are unbondable. Any alpha bound to you would destabilize the realm." Murmurs rippled through the hall. She stood there without crying, without screaming, because shock is a kind of stillness. Somewhere deep inside, something folded inward, not breaking, but sealing itself away. "And if I choose no one?" she asked. The seer hesitated. "Fate has already chosen for you." That was the day she learned the difference between law and cruelty. She left the village soon after, not in disgrace, in silence. Years passed. She learned trades that didn't require destiny's blessing: healer work, record keeping, border mediation, roles no prophecy bothered to claim. She became useful in ways fate had never predicted, and far away, the Alpha King rose to power. He was everything prophecy adored: strong, disciplined, precise. The seers praised his alignment. The stars bent easily around his path. He was promised a mate who would anchor the realm and solidify the old magic. He believed them. Until the night destiny faltered. The bond struck without warning, burning through his chest as if lightning had found bone. Not during ceremony, not during ritual. In the middle of a council meeting. He staggered, breath ripping free as magic spiraled out of control. Seers cried out. Guards reached for him instinctively, but the bond did not point toward the woman prophecy had prepared. It pointed away, toward the borderlands, toward a woman fate had erased. "She doesn't exist," a seer screamed. "She can't." The Alpha King rose slowly, hand pressed to his chest, eyes blazing with something no prophecy had accounted for. "Then explain," he said coldly, "why destiny is kneeling to her name." That was when the realm began to crack, and somewhere beyond the reach of seers and stars, she felt it too, the sudden, violent awakening of a bond that fate had sworn would never exist. She dropped to one knee, gasping, the night air sharp in her lungs. Not fear, recognition. For the first time in her life, destiny had spoken to her directly, and it had done so through defiance. The bond did not arrive gently. It did not bloom like the stories claimed, warm and reassuring, threaded with comfort and certainty. It tore through her instead, raw, abrupt, demanding attention from a body that had been taught since childhood that destiny had no place for her. She collapsed to her knees in the borderlands, breath tearing from her chest, as if the air itself had turned solid. Her hands clawed into the dirt, grounding herself by instinct alone, while the sensation burned through her veins, heat and pressure, and a resonance so deep it felt older than language. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's not possible." Fate had made that clear. She was unbondable, unchosen, an error best ignored. And yet the bond pulsed again, undeniable, violent in its clarity. Not imagined, not misfiring. It carried intent, direction, awareness. Someone was reaching for her. Far away, in the high citadel crowned by runes and prophecy, the Alpha King staggered as the bond struck a second time. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Seers cried out as the star maps ignited without command, threads of light snapping and recoiling like living things. Ancient wards screamed in protest, magic surging in waves that cracked stone and sent guards stumbling backward. "This isn't possible," the High Seer shouted, gripping the altar. "Her thread was severed." The Alpha King straightened slowly. Breath heavy but controlled, eyes burning with cold precision. He felt the bond now, not as a theoretical construct, not as ritual activation, as choice. "Then your reading was wrong," he said. The seer's face drained of color. "My lord, if you pursue this, if you acknowledge her, the realm will destabilize. Prophecy will fracture." The Alpha King's jaw tightened. "Prophecy already has." The bond flared again, sharper this time, dragging his awareness outward, past walls and wards, beyond borders drawn by fearful ancestors. Toward her. Back in the borderlands, she forced herself to stand, legs shaking as the sensation settled into something less explosive, but no less present. The bond did not fade. It waited. She wrapped her cloak tighter around herself and looked up at the moon, heart pounding not with fear, but disbelief. "You don't get to change your mind now," she said softly. "Not after all this time." The moon did not answer, but the bond did, subtle, insistent, pulling not towards submission, but awareness. Someone powerful had felt it too, someone who had not turned away. That realization terrified her more than fate ever had. She had built her life around absence, around the certainty that no alpha would ever look for her. not because she wasn't worthy, but because destiny itself had barred the path. If the bond was real, everything she knew would have to be re-examined. In the citadel, the Alpha King dismissed the council without waiting for permission. "They'll move against you," his beta warned quietly as they walked the outer gallery. "The seers will claim corruption. They'll demand containment." "Let them," the Alpha King replied. "They've mistaken inevitability for truth for too long." "You're choosing her over the realm," the beta said carefully. The Alpha King stopped and turned. "I'm choosing choice over fear." The bond pulsed in agreement, steady, resolute. By nightfall, watchers were sent to the borderlands, not to capture, not to coerce, to confirm, to witness. She felt them before she saw them, faint disturbances at the edge of her awareness, cautious, respectful. Scouts trained not to dominate, not to provoke. Wolves who had been instructed to observe, not interfere. They stopped at a distance, eyes wide as recognition hit them. "It's her," one whispered. The words carried weight she had never been allowed to claim. She did not run. She stood her ground, shoulders squared, gaze steady despite the tremor still lingering in her limbs. "Go back," she said calmly. "Whatever you think you felt, it's not mine to explain." One of the scouts swallowed hard. The Alpha King felt it too. Her heart stuttered. "He knows," the scout continued. "And he's defying the seers to find you." Silence stretched between them, thick and charged. "Tell him," she said slowly, "that fate already made its choice about me." The scout hesitated. "He says fate doesn't get the final word." The bond surged, sharp, validating, terrifying. She turned away before they could see the truth flicker across her face. If the Alpha King truly defied destiny to choose her, then the question was no longer whether fate had rejected her. It was whether she was willing to be chosen after surviving without it. Behind her, the scouts withdrew, carrying confirmation back to a citadel already trembling under the weight of broken prophecy. She stood alone beneath the moon, breath steadying, mind racing. Fate had erased her. An Alpha King had found her anyway, and somewhere between those two truths, the realm itself was beginning to unravel. The seers called an emergency convocation before dawn. The citadel's highest chamber, sealed for omens that threatened the realm, filled with voices sharpened by panic rather than reverence. Star maps glowed erratically along the walls, fate threads flickering in patterns no one could stabilize. "She cannot exist," the High Seer insisted, hands trembling as he traced broken sigils. Her thread was severed. The moon itself rejected her. "And yet the bond persists," another seer countered, voice thin. "Not weakening, not destabilizing, strengthening." The Alpha King stood apart from them, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the chaos they could no longer control. "Your error," he said calmly, "was assuming destiny could not be questioned." The High Seer rounded on him. "My lord, if you pursue her, the prophecy collapses. The kingdom's alignment has already collapsed," the Alpha King interrupted, "because it was built on omission." Silence fell. "You erased her because she didn't fit," he continued. "And now fate is answering that arrogance. The seers exchanged glances, heavy with dread. You will not bring her here, the High Seer said sharply. She will destabilize the bond lattice. We must contain the anomaly. The Alpha King's eyes hardened. She is not an anomaly. She is a threat, another seer snapped. No, he replied. She is a consequence. He turned and left the chamber before they could respond, the bond flaring with quiet approval as he moved. In the borderlands, she did not sleep. The bond hummed beneath her skin, no longer violent, but present enough to demand acknowledgement. It did not pull her toward the citadel. It did not beg. It waited. She built a fire with steady hands, grounding herself in routine as memories surfaced. Years spent learning how to live without expectation, without prophecy. She had earned every quiet moment she possessed, and now destiny wanted to reclaim her. Footsteps approached cautiously, not scouts this time. A single wolf stepped into the firelight, tall, broad-shouldered, his presence controlled but unmistakably alpha. He stopped well outside her space, hands visible, posture open. I won't cross unless invited, he said quietly. She studied him, sensing the truth before he spoke it aloud. You're him. Yes, the Alpha King replied. And I won't pretend this is coincidence. The bond surged, not painfully, but with unmistakable recognition. It did not demand submission. It acknowledged equality. You should go back, she said evenly. Your seers will be tearing the sky apart by now. They already are, he replied. That's not my concern. She laughed softly. It should be. They built your kingdom. They built a story, he corrected. Not the truth. He did not approach further, did not reach for her, did not invoke fate or duty. That mattered. You were told I didn't exist, she said. I was told you were dangerous, he replied. They were right. For the wrong reasons. She raised a brow slightly. And why are you here? Because I felt the bond, he said simply. And because I refuse to let others decide who I am allowed to choose. The fire crackled between them. You're defying prophecy, she said. That kind of arrogance destroys kingdoms. Yes, he agreed, and blind obedience destroys people. The bond steadied, approval rippling through it like a deep exhale. She stood slowly, meeting his gaze levelly. If you choose me, she said, you don't get to undo what fate did to me. I wouldn't dare, he replied. I want to build something that never needed permission. Silence stretched, not awkward, not tense, honest. Behind him, the night remained undisturbed. No guards, no counsel, no witnesses except the moon. You don't know what choosing me will cost you, she said. He inclined his head. And you don't know what refusing will cost you either. The bond pulsed, sharp, insistent, not command, choice. She took a breath and stepped closer, not into his space, but nearer than before. Then understand this, she said. I will not kneel to destiny, and I will not be used to rewrite prophecy unless it burns completely. A slow, genuine smile touched his mouth. Good, he said. It deserves to. Far away, the citadel shuddered as another fate thread snapped free. The realm was already paying attention. The bond did not settle after their meeting. It sharpened. She felt it the moment the Alpha King turned away from the fire, his retreat measured and deliberate, as if he understood instinctively that pushing closer would fracture something still fragile. The bond hummed between them, not yearning, not urgency, tension. The kind that demanded honesty rather than proximity. She watched him disappear into the dark before extinguishing the fire and moving camp before dawn. Old habit, survival learned from years of being unseen. She refused to let destiny or an Alpha King decide her stillness. By the time the Citadel's scouts returned the next night, she was already elsewhere. In the capital, the seers lost control. Fate threads continued to misalign, star maps bleeding into patterns no one could stabilize. Ritual fires burned unevenly. Prophecy texts rewrote themselves mid-chant, old words dissolving into ash as new lines scorched into existence. "She's destabilizing the lattice," the High Seer insisted. "We must sever the bond before it anchors." "You can't," the Alpha King replied calmly. "You already tried." Silence slammed through the chamber. "What are you proposing?" an elder demanded. "That we stop treating destiny as law," the Alpha King said, "and start treating it as information." Outrage erupted. "You would tear down the foundation of the realm." "No," he said evenly. "I would remove the parts that were built on fear." That was when the seers made their choice. Containment, not of her, of him. By dawn, the Alpha King was stripped of ceremonial authority, not dethroned, but restricted. Guards loyal to prophecy were reassigned. Council decrees stalled. Power shifted subtly, dangerously, and the bond reacted. She felt it like a cold spike through her chest, not pain, but warning. Someone was interfering, not attacking, but constraining. She dropped to one knee in the high grasses, breath steady as she focused inward. The bond did not weaken, it resisted. Far away, the Alpha King felt it too, pressure building against invisible restraints, his dominance flaring not to command but to shield. "They're trying to isolate you," his beta said quietly, "to force the bond to collapse." "It won't," the Alpha King replied. "Not like this." "Then what will happen?" He met his beta's gaze. "The realm will have to choose." They found each other again 3 nights later. Not by pursuit, by alignment. She was crossing a stone bridge over a ravine when the bond pulled sharply, not toward danger, but recognition. She stopped, turning just as he stepped from the trees on the opposite side. Both froze. No guards, no watchers. Only the night, the ravine below, and a truth neither of them could pretend away. "They're containing you," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied. "You should leave," she added. "Before they force a choice, you can't survive." He shook his head. "I already made my choice." The bond surged. Hot, approving, alive. She crossed the bridge slowly, stopping a careful distance from him. "Then understand this," she said. "If you fall because of me, I won't forgive myself." He met her gaze steadily. "If I stand because of you, I won't regret it." Silence stretched. "Prophecy says I shouldn't exist," she said. "And yet you do," he replied. "That makes it wrong." No, she corrected softly. It makes it incomplete. He smiled faintly. Then let's finish it. That was when the seers struck. Not with force, with declaration. The sky fractured above them, light twisting unnaturally as a binding sigil ignited across the horizon. A fate severance ritual, ancient, forbidden, designed to collapse bonds deemed destabilizing. The ground shook, the bond screamed. She gasped, staggering as pressure crushed inward, destiny attempting to erase what it could not control. The Alpha King moved instantly, stepping into her space for the first time, bracing her with his body as he flared his dominance. Not outward, inward, against fate itself. No, he growled, voice vibrating with power. You do not get to decide this. The bond responded, not with submission, with defiance. Light surged between them, raw, uncontrolled, burning through the sigil like fire through parchment. The severance ritual shattered, backlash ripping through the sky in a thunderous crack. Far away, seers screamed as star maps imploded. The realm reeled. She clutched his arm, breath ragged, eyes blazing with disbelief. You just declared war on destiny. He looked down at her, expression fierce and unrepentant. No, he said, I declared independence. The bond settled, not quiet, anchored, and somewhere deep in the fabric of the realm, fate adjusted, not erased, not defeated, rewritten. The backlash did not end with the shattered ritual. It spread. Across the realm, moon shrines cracked, old runes dulled, fate threads that had once glowed with unquestioned certainty dimmed or shifted, no longer aligning cleanly with the paths the seers had enforced for generations. Pacts woke to dreams that did not match prophecy. Bonds activated where none were predicted. Others failed where fate had promised stability. Chaos, quiet, creeping chaos. She felt it as a low vibration beneath her skin as she and the Alpha King moved away from the ravine, traveling without haste, but without delay. The bond between them had changed. No longer a question, no longer a test. It was chosen. That ritual wasn't meant to fail, she said, as they crossed into the shelter of old forest, voice steady, despite the tremor still threading her limbs. No, he replied. It was meant to end you. The truth settled heavily. And you stopped it, she said. I stood in front of it, he corrected. There's a difference. The bond pulsed, acknowledging the cost he had accepted without hesitation. By dawn, messengers were already searching for them, not to arrest, not to summon, to understand. The seer's authority had fractured so violently that no single voice could claim clarity anymore. They stopped near an abandoned watchpost overlooking a valley once ruled entirely by prophecy lines. From there, they could see fires burning where councils argued through the night. You can still turn back, she said quietly. They'll try to preserve you, shape this into a narrative where you're forgiven. He looked at her evenly. At the cost of you being erased again? She didn't answer. That's not preservation, he continued. That's repetition. The bond held firm. In the citadel, the High Seer faced the council with hands stained by ash and failure. The bond has anchored, the seer admitted hoarsely, not through fate, but through mutual choice. Uproar followed. Then rewrite it, an elder demanded. Correct the anomaly. The seer shook his head slowly. It can't be rewritten without destroying the lattice entirely. Silence fell. Outside the chamber, wolves listened, warriors, servants, scribes. For the first time, the truth was not contained. Fate was not law, it was guidance, and it could be defied without the world ending. That realization rippled outward faster than fear ever could. She and the Alpha King felt it as they rested near the valley's edge. An easing of pressure, a subtle realignment that did not pull them inward, but outward. People are choosing, she said softly. Yes, he replied, and some will choose wrong. That was always true, she said. By nightfall, the first open challenge came, not from seers, but from a rival alpha whose rule depended entirely on prophetic legitimacy. He confronted them at the valley floor, dominance flaring violently as he tried to force the bond to respond. It didn't. You're destabilizing everything, the rival alpha snarled. You'll bring the realm to ruin. She stepped forward calmly. The realm survived centuries of lies. It will survive truth. The rival alpha lunged, not to attack her, but to assert control over the bond itself. The Alpha King moved instantly, blocking him with lethal precision. This bond is not yours to test, he said coldly. The rival alpha faltered, not from fear, but from confusion. It didn't work. Nothing responded the way prophecy said it should. He retreated, shaken. Later, as the moon rose over the valley, she sat beside the Alpha King in companionable silence. They'll keep coming, she said. Yes, he agreed, until this becomes normal. She smiled faintly. Or until we don't survive it. He met her gaze. Either way, it was worth choosing. The bond warmed, not romantically, not possessively, steady. For the first time in her life, fate was not a ceiling. It was a landscape, and together they stood at its edge, not as ruler and mate, but as two wolves who had chosen each other after destiny said they never should. Normality did not return. It rearranged. Across the realm, packs stumbled through the aftermath of a truth they had never been prepared to carry. Fate could be defied without annihilation. That knowledge unsettled every hierarchy built on inevitability. Alphas hesitated. Councils fractured. Seers argued themselves hoarse, trying to explain a world that no longer obeyed their maps. She felt those shifts like distant tremors, ripples moving outward from the night destiny cracked. She and the Alpha King did not hide, but they did not declare either. They moved deliberately through neutral territories, meeting wolves who came not to kneel or challenge, but to ask. What happens now? Was the question repeated most often. There is no now destiny prepared you for, she told them honestly. Only what you choose next. Some bristled, others exhaled in relief. One evening, they reached a high plateau where three old prophecy lines once intersected. The markers lay broken now, stones scattered as if the land itself had rejected their authority. Fires burned nearby, where representatives from multiple packs had gathered, uneasy, wary, but unwilling to leave. A council without permission. The Alpha King stopped at the edge of the gathering, letting her decide whether to approach. She did. Not with dominance, not with ceremony, with presence. You defied fate, one alpha said bluntly, arms crossed. Why shouldn't we tear this apart before it spreads? Because it already has, she replied calmly. Another voice cut in. The seers say this will lead to chaos. Yes, she agreed. So will pretending chaos wasn't already here. Murmurs rippled through the group. Prophecy gave us stability, an elder argued. No, she said gently. It gave you predictability. Those are not the same thing. The Alpha King spoke then, not to assert authority, but to clarify. I was raised to believe destiny excused cruelty, he said. That belief nearly destroyed everything I was sworn to protect. Silence followed. What do you propose? Someone asked. She shook her head. We propose nothing. Confusion flickered across several faces. This isn't a movement, she continued. There is no doctrine, no replacement prophecy. Then what are we supposed to do? Another demanded. She met his gaze steadily. Live with the weight of your choices instead of outsourcing them. The bond pulsed, quiet, approving. Some wolves left that night, angered by the lack of answers. Others stayed, talking until dawn, arguing, questioning, recalibrating. Seeds were planted. Later, as they stood apart from the fires, the Alpha King studied her quietly. You don't want to lead, he said. No, she replied. I want to unmake the lie that leadership is the same as control. And after that? She considered the question. After that, the world will decide what it needs. The bond shifted, not tugging, not binding, balanced. Before dawn, a messenger arrived breathless, carrying news from the citadel. The seers have fractured, he said. 3 have resigned. 1 has vanished. The rest are rewriting the archives. She nodded. They're trying to survive relevance. And you? The messenger asked. What will you do if they come for you again? She looked toward the horizon where light crept slowly across open land. Then they'll have to face a truth they can't burn, she said. That destiny doesn't choose for us. The messenger left shaken. As the fires died down and the gathering dispersed, she and the Alpha King remained on the plateau, watching wolves depart with heavier thoughts than they had arrived with. You've become something prophecy can't touch, he said quietly. She smiled faintly. So have you. The bond warmed, steady, unafraid. Whatever came next, it would not be dictated by stars or seers. It would be chosen. The realm pushed back, not all at once, not openly. Change rarely announces itself as resistance. It seeps in through fear, through leaders who realize too late that their authority depended entirely on inevitability. Packs that had once bowed to prophecy began to fracture along invisible fault lines. Some embraced choice. Others clung desperately to the certainty of being told who they were meant to be. And those were the most dangerous. The first real challenge came from the Eastern Dominion, where fate law had been enforced with brutal precision for generations. Their alpha, crowned by seers and sustained by ritual, declared her existence an abomination and issued a formal decree. Any pack that recognized the defiant bond would be treated as traitors to the realm's balance. War language. She read the decree quietly as the Alpha King stood beside her, the parchment crackling faintly under her fingers. They're afraid, she said. Yes, he replied. and fear always wants permission to hurt. The bond tightened, not painfully, but alert. It recognized escalation. They did not respond with threat. They responded with visibility. Together, they traveled openly into contested territories, not to conquer, not to command, but to stand where prophecy had once decided everything. They attended councils without insignia, spoke without invoking rank, listened longer than was comfortable. Some doors slammed shut, others cracked open. In one border city, an elder confronted her openly. "You're tearing apart something that held us together." She met his gaze evenly. "It held you still, not together." That night, a fate ritual meant to suppress choice collapsed mid-casting, leaving the seers shaken and exposed. Word spread fast. Destiny was losing its grip. In the Eastern Dominion, the Alpha prepared for confrontation, troops mobilizing under banners marked with ancient sigils. The seers urged swift action, promising prophecy would protect them. It didn't. The moment their forces crossed into neutral ground, the old magic faltered. Bonds failed to respond. Commands rang hollow. Warriors hesitated, not because they feared battle, but because certainty no longer backed their orders. The Alpha King stood at the front, not issuing a command, but holding the line through presence, alone. "This ends without blood," he said calmly. The Eastern Alpha laughed. "You can't stop inevitability." She stepped forward then, voice carrying without force. "Neither can you." The bond surged, not outward, not aggressive, stabilizing. The land itself seemed to exhale. The Eastern Alpha faltered, not defeated, but exposed. The illusion cracked. They withdrew, not in victory, in confusion. Afterward, as dusk settled over the neutral plains, she leaned against a standing stone older than any prophecy, breath finally slowing. "That was restraint," the Alpha King said quietly. "That was survival," she corrected. The bond softened, not diminishing, but settling into something complete. No longer forged in opposition, no longer sustained by defiance alone, balanced. Later, alone beneath a sky unburdened by fate lines, he asked her the question that had been waiting between them since the ravine. "When this stabilizes," he said, "what will you choose?" She didn't answer immediately. "I won't become what prophecy feared," she said at last. "And I won't become what rebellion demands." "And us?" he asked. She met his gaze, steady and unafraid. "We exist because we choose to, nothing more, nothing less." The bond agreed, not with fire, with certainty. The realm was changing, not because fate had been broken, but because it had been put in its place. And for the first time, she understood that being chosen by an Alpha King who defied destiny was never the point. The point was that destiny no longer got to decide who deserved to be chosen. The realm did not crown what came next. It absorbed it. By the time the moon completed its cycle, destiny had been reduced to something quieter, consulted, not obeyed. Seers still existed, but their voices no longer carried the final weight. Councils debated longer. Alphas hesitated before invoking inevitability. Bonds formed where no prophecy had predicted them and endured because they were chosen daily. She felt the change everywhere. not as triumph, as space. They stood on a rise overlooking the lowlands where old fate lines had once been etched into stone. The markers lay scattered now, half buried by grass and wind. Below them, packs gathered without banners, negotiating borders with words instead of dominance. "It's stabilizing," the Alpha King said quietly. "Yes," she replied, "because people stopped waiting for permission." He watched the valley for a long moment. "They still look to us." "They look to what we represent," she corrected, "not who we are." The bond between them had become something precise, not loud, not consuming. A steady alignment that neither demanded nor constrained. It did not insist on proximity. It did not punish distance. It held. Messengers came less frequently now. Crises still arose, but they were handled by those who owned them. The realm had learned the difficult art of responsibility. One evening, as the sky burned gold and violet, the Alpha King removed the last ceremonial marker from his arm, a symbol once required to channel prophetic authority. He set it on the stone between them. "I don't need this anymore," he said. She studied it briefly, then nodded. "Good. You never asked me to do this," he added. "No," she said, "because if you had needed asking, it wouldn't matter." Silence settled, comfortable, earned. Far away, the High Seer's successor stood before a revised archive, rewriting the final lines of an ancient text. Where once it read, "Destiny is absolute," it now read, "Destiny is a map, not a command." The change rippled outward. She felt it as a release, not from the bond, not from him, but from the weight of being defined by what fate had denied her. The scar of erasure no longer ached. It had become proof. Proof that survival did not require validation. As night fell, they walked the ridge together, neither leading, neither following. When they stopped, it was because the view demanded it. "What will they remember?" he asked quietly. "The seers, the broken rituals, the war that never came?" She considered the valley below. "They'll remember the moment inevitability stopped working. And us?" She met his gaze. "They'll argue about us, which means we did it right." The bond warmed, subtle, complete. He reached for her hand, not as claim, not as crown, but as choice renewed. She took it without hesitation. Below them, fires lit the dark in small, deliberate clusters, signals of gathering, not conquest. The realm breathed, uncoerced. She had been rejected by fate. Chosen by an Alpha King who defied destiny. And together they had proven something the stars never wanted written. That the strongest bond is not the one prophecy predicts, but the one that survives when destiny is told no. Fate erased her from its design, but when an Alpha King chose her anyway, destiny learned that choice is stronger than prophecy.